we need IDs not only for the purposes of onboarding to financial services. We need them, and it's even maybe more important right now to prove that we are human online. And with AI, this becomes a very big problem, right? You don't know if you are talking to a human. To be honest with you don't know if I look like this because this could be a deep fake right now, right? You have no idea.
You're listening to Foreign Founders. We tell stories of immigrant and first-gen entrepreneurs, investors, operators, and ecosystem builders. And on the show, you hear incredible stories that often go untold.
Are traditional plastic IDs and photo uploads susceptible to an ever-increasing amount of fraud and becoming super outdated? At least one founder thinks so. On the show, I welcome a Polish entrepreneur, Jarek Sygitowicz, who is the co-founder and CSO of a YC-backed London-based startup, Authologic. Welcome to Foreign Founders, Jarek.
Good to be here. Thank you very much for the invite.
Thank you. I would love to start off with learning more about your background, and especially when we talked previously, operating between design and technology and how that was instilled really early on.
Yeah. So I was born into the family of tailors. So my grandfather, my grandmother, my mother, and my father were tailors. So I was very early on introduced to something that today I may call a kind of Bauhaus school of design. Bauhaus school of design is all about understanding the materials you're designing with and kind of usability of those materials and also the usability of the final product, right? So if you want to design a great suit, you need to understand the difference in the fabric, what is the color made of, how the shoulders look like, and what is the padding, the different materials that go inside the outside shell, breathability of the thing, and it is a lot of craftsmanship. It is involved in creating a piece of suit. So I was introduced. I was like 6 years old when I first spent whole days in my father's project room. And so this was, I guess, something that translates very well into technology because when you're designing something like a digital product, you need to understand, even if it's just pixels. I'm not talking about designing the hardware products, but just pixels. They are. You need to understand what you are designing from. What is the UI kit? What is the CSS, JS capabilities? What is the browser? What browser can do? And you need to fully understand the material you're designing from. And of course, you need to be focused on the outcome, which is the usable product, which is not only beautiful but also works well. So I was always obsessed with creating something that is actually changing the way things work, and they are both elegant, minimalistic, and designed well.
Yeah, that's actually a fascinating concept to tie it together because that's so true. Like when you look at a suit, you don't really understand how much of those, a lot of different materials coming together, a lot of different thinking coming together. And same as software in that way, it's like it can be 2D or it can be very much multi-dimensional for users, but also on the under the hood.
Yeah, absolutely. And the differences between fabrics actually define what the suit is good for. You have different suits for winter, you have different suits for summer, and they will not work. I mean, you will be sweaty if you wear winter suit in the summer. So usability is very much defined and baked into the product. So yeah, I'm obsessing to this day, what kind of tools we use when we are designing products. Yeah.
And so you had the family background was Tailors, but you decided you want to go into technology. And what was that journey from technology being involved really early on? If I recall, you started out in the 90s with building tech blogs, etc.
Yeah, late 90s.
Your company.
Yeah, so I was always fascinated with the computers. So the first moment I saw the computer, I felt that like this is it. And when I spent too much time probably by the computer, and my mom always said like stop playing with the computers, go outside, do something useful. And turns out that it was quite useful what I was doing. But um,
Yeah.
the parents tend to don't understand the next big thing, right? So I was fascinated, and when I went to the University of Technology in Warsaw, this was the moment, like in 1999, early 2000. This was the moment when I learned about internet, and this was completely like this was an obsession. It wasn't really like I spent my whole days, on IRC, on Usenet, and this was the moment where I learned about Linux and open source movement. And because I understood the difference between Linux system, and I was using on my university with the default workstations we had was Solaris. So I kind of understood the difference between the Windows operating system and DOS and how crappy those were compared to the Unix and Linux, right? So this was this kind of the moment where I understood that okay, I need to stand behind something that is much better than the status quo. And by the way, this rhymes with the thing that I'm doing right now. So I was always against status quo if it meant that the status quo was crappier than the next big thing, right? I felt that Windows wasn't up to the task. It wasn't good operating system for the next millennia of internet and connectivity. At that time, it didn't have all the features that were required by the networking operating system, so it didn't have user permissions, it wasn't secure enough. So I felt that I had to promote Linux as an alternative. And I created a blog called linuxnews.pl, and I did it with my now co-founder at Authologic, Marek. And so we did this together. And this was the time when if you wanted to start a blog, you had to write your own CMS system yourself.
Yeah.
Marek was doing
Right.
backend development. I
It's
was
not
doing
like
front end.
Substack or
Yeah,
Medium.
yeah, exactly. There was no such thing at that time. So you had, this was times where Slashdot was all the rage, and everyone had to write their own systems. At least what we did is we eventually wrote our own CMS, and we run our blog on it. Actually, this was my first exit. So this blog was acquired. Today, I would say, acquired by the portal. At that time, the Yahoos of everyone wanted to create something like a Yahoo, so we joined forces with a local Yahoo, and and the rest is history. I joined them, and this was my kind of first entrepreneurial exercise, I would say. Yeah.
And tell me about Authologic, your company today that you're building with Marek.
So I'm building it with Mark and Chris. So there's three co-founders. Authologic is all about changing status quo around identity on the internet. So the first thing that we observed and was that today in the 21st century, and if you pause for a moment, like think about this, in 21st century, that status quo is that you take a photo of your plastic document to prove that you are who you are online, right? Photo of a plastic document.
Yeah.
We have,
And that
car
was
keys in
also
my.
way better. That was also way better than what it was a couple of years ago, because now, like when I'm trying to validate it, I can do it all on my phone and take a picture. But before
Yeah.
I had to like send an email or something, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
even then
It
it's
was if
like
it was
outdated
even
but
less secure.
improved.
Yeah, it improved, but it's like I'm comparing this to the state of ships in the late 1900s. You had ships like the sail ships, and people were building better versions, and then came the airplanes, right? So this is the same situation. Like we are still taking photos of plastic documents, and thank God for COVID, to be honest with you, because this was the moment where all the governments realized that we need alternative because we were shut down, closed. every branch was closed of the bank, of the government, agencies, and people realized that with this pace of, adoption of the internet, we need some alternatives that are actually good. Authologic is all about making use of e-IDs, so government-issued digital IDs, identity wallets, and bank IDs, as easy as possible for the businesses, and especially regulated businesses. So that this is what we do.
And you said there wasn't that much of a interest in government until COVID happened. Is that right?
Yeah, because this was not top of mind when the government, first of all, adoption of e-gov initiatives around the world is different, and not many governments are actually super advanced in this regard. It's always like easier for the government to say, like, you come to us, right? If you want something, come to us, to our branch. A lot of the countries actually are innovating around that. And for example, in Poland, we have government in my phone. So I can do pretty much everything out of my phone, and I don't need to go anywhere. But this is the development of the last 4 years. And COVID
Awesome.
actually like made people realize that we need alternatives to whatever there is currently default on the market. And I think that the second thing that happened is that a lot of regulated companies realized that, and they pushed the government, especially people like banks, because banks were shut down, right? So the only way they could acquire customers was through the app or web. So then they realized that, taking photo of a plastic ID is super unsecure. Like, you have to have a lot of people looking at those pictures. And even if you have a KYC system, right, that automates a lot of the heavy lifting of understanding if this is a fake ID or not, etc. But still, you need a lot of manual work to actually make this viable option for user onboarding. And they realize that it's completely like backwards. They spend a lot of money to create huge departments of people looking at pictures, trying to make sure that the customers have relatively good experience of signing up to the bank. And they were one of the people that were pushing governments to do something with it, because it won't scale in the long run. And eventually governments took notice, and specifically in Europe, there is a regulation called eIDAS 2.0, and it mandates, and the next year is the deadline, it mandates all the member states of European Union to issue identity wallets, and mandates all the regulated companies to accept them. So it's a huge revolution that is coming up right now.
Yeah, so this regulatory change swept over due to a reason why people can't go, like COVID, go to in-person locations. What is Authologic doing for these? What solutions are you deploying, essentially?
Okay, so for regulated companies, we are providing a global e-ID hub. So we are aggregating, orchestrating all the government-issued digital IDs, identity wallets, and bank IDs into a single API. So the problem with governments doing those e-IDs is that every government had different idea about the e-ID, right? So there's, every country has its own version. And to be honest, in many countries, there's like 3 different options. And if you are a global company operating in many countries, there's no way you will be talking to all the government agencies or private, companies with big adoption to connect to all of them, because it takes a lot of time and makes no sense, clearly. So eventually, after COVID, the whole landscape became so complex that you can compare it to payments. Every country has multiple different local e-ID schemes, or bank IDs, or digital IDs with the NFC chips in it. And basically, if this is so complex as payments, you need something similar to a payment aggregator like Stripe. So we pretty much created Stripe for KYC. We aggregate everything into a single API. It's super easy to connect and take advantage of those.
Yep. And what is interesting too, you and your co-founders are Polish entrepreneurs, but you're also building. Is your headquarters in London, or is
Yes.
it an office?
Yeah, we have an office. So we are fully remote, so it's hard to say where is our headquarters. But basically, we are. It adds a layer of complexity, by the way, because if we had headquarters, it'll be much easier. But we are fully distributed, and we have two offices, one in Warsaw, one in London. Yes.
And why do you decide to have an office in Warsaw? In London.
So London office is very important to us because London is essentially a fintech hub. So if you are building
Mhm.
something, for a global audience, chances are that you are based in London. And we have customers in
Mhm.
London that are out of London building solutions for people in Bangladesh, Pakistan, and similar countries, right? So it is a talent pool. It is a place where a lot of the fintech innovation happens, and we just had to be there.
But you said earlier that there's an EU law that's coming out that says all the member states needs an EID of some sort. UK isn't part of that, but you think that's still a super value add because they have a global network still as a
Yeah.
fintech hub.
A lot of UK
Yeah.
companies operate in Europe. By the way, e-IDs are a global phenomenon. UK just launched e-ID wallet called Gov.uk. I think it's launched in the pilot phase right now, but it'll be fully launched
Mhm.
very soon. And US is doing similar things with MDL, so mobile driving licenses. You have 10 states already on board and more coming. So it is fully global phenomenon. And in Europe, we have this law that it mandates, member states to issue the EIDs. But in many countries, there is a second thing that drives them because COVID ended, right? We don't have lockdowns anymore, but we have something better from our perspective, like, market driving perspective. It is AI. So a lot of governments are trying to issue digital IDs because, first of all, citizens expect them, but the second of all, we need IDs not only for the purposes of onboarding to financial services, we need them, and it's
Mhm.
even maybe more important right now to prove that we are human online. And with AI, this becomes a very big problem, right? You don't know if you are talking to a human. To be honest with you, you don't know if I look like this because this could be a deep fake right now, right? You have no idea. The deep fakes,
Right.
AI
And it's going to
generated
get better and
images.
better.
Yeah, and it's getting better and better by the day. So I'm not sure if you've seen, like 3 months ago, there was a viral post on LinkedIn showing how easy it is to create a deep fake, fake ID on using ChatGPT, and people are freaking out. Basically, you cannot rely on images anymore. You can be influenced by the bots, and we see this in Central Europe a lot because we are being attacked by Russians a lot in the internet sphere. So we are very deeply aware of the problems that AI is causing. And I think AI people know this as well. So Sam Altman actually helped launch a project called WorldCoin. And right now it's called
Mm-hmm.
World. And it's a digital
Yep.
identity wallet that its sole purpose is to prove that you are a human. And e-IDs issued by the governments can do the same thing. And zero knowledge proofs are the way to do it. So you don't have to share any information about yourself. You just do it, cryptographically. But basically, this is one of the biggest things that is going on in identity right now.
Two questions following from that. First is, how does it work for someone who is like not every day thinking about EIDs, and especially EIDs within the context of AI? And the second thing is that solution applicable both online identity but also offline identity?
Yeah. Okay, great questions. So I'm not sure if any of the listeners have car keys in the phone, but if you don't have, you probably are using payment card in the phone. So the chances are like 80%, if you are Generation Z, 80% of you have payment cards in the phone. And so let's stick to this example. You onboard your card by taking picture of your card or typing in the card number, and then the payment card issuer, which is the bank, is being contacted by your wallet and is basically confirming that this is your card, this is you, and you can use it in your phone. So exactly the same thing happens when you have a wallet. Identity wallet means that you are onboarding your ID, your physical government supplied ID, to the wallet, and the government actually confirms that this is you and the ID is not fake, and you can from now on use it from the phone. And now how to use it online and offline. So in an offline world, the usage is super simple. You just scan QR codes. So if you want to exchange ID information in the bank will show you the QR code, you scan it, you approve the transfer of data, and they will receive it. And you can also show it to the people. So I can actually show you how my ID looks like. This is my identity wallet supplied by the government. So this is Obywatel, and my ID is here. So in many cases, you just can show it to someone. If they want to verify if it's not fake, they can scan the QR code and I can transfer whatever data they require, if it's police or someone else who wants to know my credentials. So the offline is basically about either showing it or scanning QR codes. In an online world, we have two options right now. Again, on the desktop, you scan the QR code to use it. And on the mobile phone, you have a deep link. So basically, you click the button that says like verify or log in with your identity wallet. You jump to the wallet, you approve data transfer, and you jump back. So the median time of verification is like less than 20 seconds. The fastest we see in our system is like 12 seconds. Compare this to the traditional process that takes like 3 minutes, right? So this is the future. By the way, the latest development that happened like 2 days ago, WWDC, Apple announced support for passports within the Apple Wallet ecosystem. And today you can upload your American passport to the wallet and you are able to use it online and offline. And they introduced an API to connect this to the, for example, website, so you can verify your age very quickly. The whole process takes 5 seconds because they improved the UX. There's no jumping between the wallet and back to the website. There's just this kind of sheet that pops up and then you just approve the data transfer. Again, compare this to the fact that you need to spend 3 minutes trying to photograph your plastic document, not to mention find it first, right? Because many people don't even know where it is.
Actually, the Apple story is really interesting because I feel as though when they go into the arena to say this is the way to do it, the adoption for some reason just not for some reason, it's a very obvious reason because so many people use Apple products, but it just accelerates. Like my mom's Japanese and we've had NFC chips for payment for a long time. I've seen them in flip phones in 2000, etc. But adoption for NFC payment didn't really go up until probably like the mobile devices really adopting it, including Apple. Yeah. So the passport identity is fascinating, and then a really good like transition moment for where we're going in the future as well. So that's super awesome. And what is really cool is Authologic raised Series A from several prominent VCs. I would love to hear about your process raising money. And then especially since at the top in the beginning, I was saying Authologic is a YC-backed company. How did you get into the orbit of Y Combinator?
Okay, so let's start with the YC and then we can move on to the Series A. So YC is something that I had on my radar since a long time. I was one of the first users of Hacker News, and it always fascinated me, what they do in Silicon Valley, even, it's like many, many years, right? And we know what YC is looking for, right? Typically, it's a bunch of technical founders, a mix of, business acumen and some grand problem to solve. And we, Marek, Chris, and I are pretty much technical, like in different areas, but we are technical and can build the product ourselves. and we started ourselves, and we had additional help from Rafał, which is our first software engineer. And we knew that we are taking on a big problem that can be solved. And we had an idea, and we had a prototype of the system that can solve this idea. By the way, the first system we developed was based on banks, and this was kind of bank ID. So the alternative to scanning documents, based on banking data, we developed something that worked on as an ID verification. And I read everything about how to apply to YC. So I had to hone my communication skills, writing 2 sentences or 3 sentences response to the question that actually conveys all the necessary information is very difficult. So
It's not easy.
It is not easy. And, writing simply is a skill that I'm trying to improve. And I think this is one of the most important skills you can have. And, so this is the second thing I was focused on. So besides knowing that our profile as founders is compatible with YC, and we are after a very big problem, which is also, the like global ambition. This was the also compatible with Y Combinator. The final thing was to create an application that actually makes sense to them and shows that we know what we are doing. So, and we applied. We got accepted. This was our first application, so we got accepted very shortly after starting the company. And to be honest with you, this is one of the greatest privileges to be part of YC, because it's a community, it's a network, and to this day, it's an unfair advantage. And I segue to the second part of the question, which is Series A. This is one of the things that you, as a YC founder, have as an advantage. Like the fundraising process is much simpler. And one of the reasons why is because you have a lot of VCs reaching out to you. So I think this is kind of a mix of the things that we do, the problem that we are trying to fix, and the potential implications, like if we fix it, and this potentially mean that we will create a very big company and bring a lot of value to the world. But at the same time, being listed in a YC directory puts you on the target list for many VCs. So they are reaching out to you. And then it's all about, landing an investment is actually counterintuitive in the sense that you don't chase the VCs. You build something great and you have progress with your customers, and this cannot be ignored by the VCs. So I see a lot of founders make this mistake that they are trying to persuade investors to invest, and they are trying to create compelling pitch decks and have coffees with investors and try to sell to them the idea of that the company is, they should invest in this company. And I think that's not the way. Like, the investor will invest if you are great and they see traction and the evidence that you are focusing on users and listening to those users, and you are adapting your product, and you again have traction. So it means that the users are actually using your product. And if you focus on that 100%, the investments will follow, right? And this is, I'm not really, like, people think that this is like either, I don't know, modesty, or I don't want to answer the question, but this is in reality what you should do. And if you are part of YC, the investors will come. And if you choose to have a meeting with them, like short, 15 minutes, just to update them on what you're doing, then eventually someone will say that, okay, you should start, you're good enough, you should start fundraising process. And when you're doing the fundraising process, then it's a process. So you need to pitch, you need to have a compelling story, you need to understand the angle, you need to understand how to explain to the investors the potential of your vision, what is the problem. And typically I start with the problem. So how big is the problem? What is the driving forces? And I try to focus on either how big is the market right now, or how quickly the market grows, because you can be operating in a market that is currently very small but is growing very fast. Crypto was this kind of thing like a few years ago, right? Digital identity is today, right? So it's a relatively small market, but it's growing very, very fast. And if you have this established, like there's a problem, there is a solution that is small today but is growing very fast, and what is the potential? Like, what is the end game? So the kind of vision, like in 10 years from today, what will happen? And if you can paint this vision, and for digital identity, it's like if you believe that AI will be the next big thing, and we will have AGI running around and agents. You need to understand who is human, who is not, and everyone will be using digital identity all the time for everything, because you need to log in or prove that you're human, and so this is the kind of state of the world in 10 years from today. If you have this part, you need to focus on what you actually do to tap this potential. And you're going from, during seed stage, the bet is on the founders and the idea kind of. During the Series A, it's more about if you have tools to create a company around that. So the founders should be offloading more and more of their things to people they hire. And by Series B, you need to have a machine that actually you as a founder you are focused on building this machine that actually will conquer the world. So that's
Thank you for that, Jarek. That was super helpful, especially for a lot of founders who are listening and thinking about fundraising. It's like the idea there is fundamentals always come into play. You build good products that solve real problems for customers that love it, and then all the good things you say it will follow from there. Talking about the vision that you have.
Sorry, the interrupting, but I may one comment, if I may. So there's this thing that there's always counter argument that you can run on hype, like, oh, I'm building next crypto, and there is a crypto, hype, and everyone is throwing money at crypto companies. That's great, but first of all, quality of investors really matter. If you want to build a company that lasts or builds something important, you will get the crappiest investors that will invest in you only because of hype, right? So this is like, if you are building big company and you are really like trying to solve big problem, you should be careful who is your investor, and then therefore you should have your ducks in a row, let's say. So fundamentals are really crucial, because this is how you get the best investors.
Yeah. Let's go towards the last couple questions as we're coming to time. When you talked about your vision and the future of identity, especially in the world of a lot more AI generated content, communication, interactions, what are some of the things that average people today should be doing in regards to identity that they have not?
Okay, so very good question. So today you should pay attention if you can digitalize your ID, if your government is actually allowing you to do so, and I would opt in and do this. I know that in a lot of cultures, digital identity is always sometimes, compared to Nazi regime or fascist regime, that is government is trying to control everything that you do and trying to figure out what you do online, etc. So this is not the case with digital identity. Digital identity is much more secure than what you have today as documents. You will need to use it much more. So having digital identity is a security feature that will pay big dividends very quickly. And so pay attention to this. If you're in Europe, you will have your identity. Either you already have it, or you will have it very soon. Next year is deadline of implementation. So this is something that I would focus on, from the digital identity perspective.
And the last question I ask all founders: what are you optimistic about?
I'm a bit optimistic about everything, to be honest. You are talking with the most optimistic of the bunch. So we have three founders. One is pessimistic, the other is realistic. I'm the optimist. So
It's a good
I think
mix.
we are yeah. So I'm optimistic about everything because I think that we live in the best world, like the reality ever. Like this, the world is going into right direction. I think that finally we understand that accelerating technological development makes sense. Like we can solve pretty much all the problems by having better technology. We can solve global warming by creating technologies that will eat CO2. We can solve inventing new energy sources will improve our lives dramatically. AI, I don't think it'll kill us or take our jobs. I think this will accelerate our civilization. So I'm optimistic about everything, and I'm super pumped that I live in a world where I can be part of developing this new reality.
Thank you for closing the show with that. Jarek, if people want to reach out to you or learn more about Authologic, where do you want to take them?
You can look me up on LinkedIn. I use it probably too much, and you can shoot me an email, Jarek@authologic.com.
Amazing. Thank you for being on Forum Founders.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It was great. Thank you.